If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, well, aging. So Corbin, are you a Willie Nelson fan?
Not the biggest Willie Nelson fan, but he does have some good songs that are out there.
Yeah, well, he's turning 88 or 89 next month.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so right before my birthday, I turned 59. He turns 89. 30 years older, 30 years and a day older. But he's come out with a new album. And last night, my wife was talking about it a little bit and brought up a song that I thought was pretty cool. Have you heard his song, Energy Follows Thought?
I have, actually. It's a pretty good song. I think it's a great topic for this podcast, actually.
Yeah. I don't think it's his best song per se, but it is got some really good lyrics that I think are worth talking about. So I thought we could talk about that a little bit today. We can't play this song because obviously we got all this copyright infringement possibilities. So do you want to read the lyrics for us?
Yeah, we have the lyrics right here. So the song is called Energy Follow Thoughts. And the lyrics go, imagine what you want, then get out of the way. Remember, energy follow thought. So be careful what you say. Be careful what you ask for. Make sure it's really what you want, because your mind is made of thinking and energy follows thoughts. Your mind is in control even when you don't know. And if you let it idle, ain't no telling where it will go. Wherever you are sleeping and your dreams take you away, go on with your dreaming and listen to what they say. And if you hear spirits talking their wisdom can't be bought, apply it to your thinking, and energy follows thoughts. Your mind is in control even when you don't know. And if you let it idle, ain't no telling where it will go. Imagine what you want and get out of the way. Remember, energy follows thoughts, so be careful what you say.
Like that. It's poetic.
It's very poetic. It's kind of multidimensional, too. It's got a whole lot of layers there.
Yeah. What are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts are, there's an old saying that if I think, therefore I am, right? Or I think not, therefore I am not. Our mind is in control of a lot of what we can do. We've all heard of the old saying, mind over matter. If you're in a really tough situation and you start like whining and complaining, like, oh, I can't do that. There's no way. You're right. You can't do it. But if you are presented with a challenge and it's in front of you and you're like, well, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And you start visualizing yourself doing that challenge, or you start overcoming it, there's really no stopping the human spirit from kind of taking over and getting you into that next level.
That's true. I know a lot of people are into a lot of the more current motivational speakers, your Tony Robbins and those kind of guys, but I'm the classics. I like the old guys. I like James Allen, Orison Swett Martin, who is the founder of Success Magazine. I'm sure, have you read Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich?
No, I don't think I have.
It's actually a good book. I have a few issues with the book as I read other writers and I read through the book. I just get the impression that, it's like The Thinker, if you've seen the movie Night at the Museum, where the thinker's, I'm thinking. Where when we say think and grow rich, there's this notion of just sit down and, sit on a rock somewhere and just think, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. And suddenly this pot of gold is going to appear in front of you. And that's not really the case. And I think this is where that thought of energy follows thought comes in, that, you have to think first, imagine what you want, but you got to put some energy into it.
Right.
Everything just doesn't come your way. And that's where I like James Allen, because his book, As a Man Thinketh, is based on the proverb 23:7, which as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. I think is how it is, a loose translation or paraphrasing there. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think a lot of things on that. I think, yeah, you do have to kind of visualize stuff, in order for it to happen, in order for it to take place. I do remember when I was in high school playing football, before any really big game, our coach would get the whole team together Thursday evening, and we'd have dinner as a bonding, and then he'd have us just kind of close our eyes and visualize whatever position that we were in, making a catch if we were a receiver, making a block if we were a lineman, and just going through the motions in our head with the most perfect, flawless form. And then we'd essentially go home, go to bed, and that was the last things we were thinking about. And it kind of carried forward the next day all the way up until game time. And maybe it was just a mental mindset, but we all were working together as a team. I do know, speaking of Proverbs, currently I've been attending kind of a men's group at my own church, and we've been doing these Proverbs challenges every single morning, no matter what the day is. If it's the 18th of the month, we're reading Proverbs 18. If it's the 23rd, then we would read Proverbs 23. And that particular one has been brought up quite frequently with a lot of the group, because it's like, as men, you kind of got to think things through. And if you have self-doubt or lack confidence, that's going to carry forward with your actions. It's going to hinder you. So I think it's pretty cool. It's not just in a psychological realm, but it's also kind of in a spiritual realm. And it does touch on the fact that people have been talking about thinking and doing, or manifesting this greatness for generations and centuries almost. So I think that's a pretty cool concept.
Do you know how many chapters there are in Psalms, or in Proverbs rather?
I don't, not off the top of my head. We kind of only go to Proverbs 30, 31, but 31, there must be.
There you go. Wow,
there we go.
Imagine that. I find that very fascinating that there are 31, and the longest month is 31 days. That's actually a pretty good spiritual meditative practice to, on a daily basis, just read that psalm of the day. And I've done that, during periods of time. I mean, you do it, month after month, it starts to get a little bit too repetitive, but it's a good little practice to pick up once in a while, to just, for a couple months, just read that proverb for that day. And it generally puts a thought in your head. Again, energy follows thought. If you start your day with a positive thought, or positive thoughts, journaling in the morning, writing down some goals for the day, your day is going to follow that much more. And I think it's a very positive activity to do for wellness as a whole. I mean, to look at your spiritual, your physical, your intellectual, your emotional, and your social, setting goals for that, you're going to be working toward those throughout the day.
Well, it's amazing, just the mindset of doing that Proverbs challenge daily. It's amazing just going into the day. I think I've talked in the past on, the challenges that I experienced just in the work world, in my work environment, but just reading those challenges and just like, doing the Proverbs challenge and reading, like, it does talk about other people and other mindsets and how you have to change yours. And you mentioned waking up and journaling every day. One of the brilliant minds, Nikola Tesla, that was one of his big things to kind of pass on. If you wake up in the morning and you start writing down what you want to have accomplished during the day, or what you want to accomplish in the next few days, write it down every morning. Really start thinking about it. Have it be the first thing that you think of when you wake up and before you go to bed. What did you do in order to accomplish that? And what are you going to do tomorrow? So Nikola Tesla was really into that. Think it and make it happen.
Yeah, and it kind of brings me, and probably a little bit earlier than I thought it would come up in this conversation, but to the verses that said, "And if you hear spirits talking, their wisdom can't be bought. Apply it to your thinking, and energy follows thought." It's kind of what you're talking about with the idea of getting down, writing down your ideas first thing in the morning. Made me think of, when you have those thoughts in the middle of the night, and oh yeah, I got to remember to do that tomorrow. And of course we forget, as several hours of sleep have passed. What we really need to do is focus on, hey, you have that idea, get up, take care of it, address it right then and there, because that's when, those spirits are talking to you, whatever you might consider it to be, and write it down and act on it the next day. That should be your focus for the day.
Yeah. I think I've talked about that in another podcast. Just in order for me to be successful at work, before I leave, I write myself that to-do list so it's fresh in my mind. Okay, what did I not get accomplished today? And I write it all down, and then I don't have to worry about it. And then right when I come in, first thing the next morning, it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is a priority. This is a priority. I'm gonna make sure I get these done because I didn't get it done yesterday. So I also think it's really interesting, the fact energy follows thoughts. I don't know if you're big onto any social media trends right now, but this is actually a huge social media trend, and they call it manifesting. And I think it all kind of came. There was a little History Channel series, which Netflix ended up, and they called it The Secret. And they interviewed all these multimillionaires and billionaires, and they called it The Secret. And the secret is you are visualizing yourself having a house, or you're visualizing yourself making six figures, or you're visualizing yourself hitting your goals at the gym and accomplishing that. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, obviously, but they have practices where you start something small, where if you're driving to the store, you're visualizing yourself getting the very first parking spot. Now, I know, obviously, with us being healthy,
we visualize getting the furthest away, so we walk a little bit further and get our exercise. Come on,
we've talked about that. You're absolutely right, and we do strongly support. Definitely park at the farthest end, so you're getting those extra step ins. But the point is, if you think it, you're definitely you're manifesting something. You're putting something out there where it's going to happen. If everyone has had those experiences where it's like your fear hinders you, right? Oh, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can. And then when it's showtime, whether you're playing a sport or you're doing something at work, or you're about to take a quiz or a test, and you have all that fear built up, well, you've psyched yourself out. You've already thought of the worst possible outcome. Versus those individuals that radiate confidence, and they're like, yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I got it. I don't care what the challenge is. I've already won. I've already beat it. I've already aced it. I've already achieved my goals. I made it happen. I'm not too worried about it. Bring it on. I'm ready for it.
And that reminds me of a quote by Orson Swett Martin, who, like I said, I really love his writings. He's the founder of Success Magazine. So, all these millionaires that you were talking about, I bet many of them have followed many of the principles that he has outlined through his writings and speeches and things that he made. And he goes back, I believe he was like the early 1900s. But the quote it reminds me of says, most of our obstacles would melt away if, instead of cowering before them, we would make up our minds to walk boldly through them. And it's exactly what you're saying, that we allow things to get in our way as obstacles. We determine whether something is an obstacle or it is a building block for challenge. We talk fitness a lot in here, and I apply the principles of adaptation to just about everything, whether it's spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, or social. It's the principle of overload. and without something that is challenging us beyond our present capabilities, we're not going to grow. And so a lot of people see those challenges or that overload as something insurmountable. And so they stay where they're at. They cower in front of it and they do nothing. But the people that see those obstacles and say, that's nothing, that's just going to make me stronger. Nietzsche's quote, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. When you have that attitude, those obstacles are nothing, and you're going to use those as opportunities to grow. He also said that we make the world we live in and shape our own environment. And that's the same thing. We determine what's going to be our circumstances. And we determine that not by the place of our birth or the circumstances of our birth, but what we do with those, as I call them, opportunities rather than challenges.
Right. Well, I know there's another old quote, like whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Right. Forget who said that.
I don't remember who said that.
It wasn't Yoda, I don't think.
It wasn't Yoda. Yoda said,
there is only
do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Well, also, I remember when I was in college getting my bachelor's degree and I was taking sports psychology, we truly learned the importance of thinking. And no matter what you think, your body actually has 1/3 of a reaction to that. There was an exercise that they had us do where we took a string, and then on that string there was kind of like a washer or a nut that was tied to it. And we would hold out the string in between our index finger and our thumb, and we would just stare at it, and we were just make it rotate. We weren't twirling it, we weren't spinning it, we were just thinking rotate clockwise. And then all of a sudden, without moving our hands, that little washer at the end of that string just started rotating clockwise. And then you would think, okay, go counterclockwise. And again, without rotating it, it would just slowly start rotating counterclockwise. And it's really fascinating how much the mind has that much control over the body. And even talking about this Willie Nelson song, talking about Proverbs, talking about, the trend of manifesting, it seems to me that our thoughts also have the potential of not just the body, but the actual spirit and soul at that point.
I truly believe that God is a quantum physicist. I truly do. So any other areas of this song that really kind of pop at you? I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
Yeah, I think, where was it? It was imagine what you want and get out of the way. And I know we've kind of talked about that, and I don't want to go backwards, but the verse before that says, your mind is in control even when you don't know. If you let it idle, ain't no telling where it will go. So to me, I think if we're going to kind of do a podcast of aging well, why is this an important topic? It's like, well, part of aging and part of growing and part of maturing is to prep yourself for success. And a lot of people, I feel like they don't necessarily know what it is that they want. It doesn't matter if you don't know. Your mind is always thinking. So just like working out and exercising and strengthening your body, strengthen your mind, encourage it. Reach for those stars, push yourself beyond the limit, allow yourself to be the best version of yourself, constantly grow, and don't hinder yourself with negative thoughts. Don't think, I can't do it. There's no way. No, that you can do it. Whatever it is that you want, go for it. If you want to retire at the age of 35, it's going to be challenging. Definitely going to be challenging, but make it happen. What do you need to do in order for it to start doing it? If you're 65 and you're listening to this and you're like, you know what? I really want to walk up the stairs of an Aztec temple. That's the one thing I want to do. Start visualizing yourself doing it and go for it. Whatever goal that you have, keep doing it. If you idle your mind and you just let it sit, you're not growing. You're not moving. You are not achieving the excellence that you should be achieving with your life.
And I think with, talking about with aging, as we always do, I think you make a really good point there. When we project forward as to what we want to be, we have a tendency as we age to think, well, old age is going to be, osteoporosis, so, be using a cane. And, we picture this old, frail individual, but that doesn't have to be that way. We can make the decision very young. I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to allow sickness to take hold in my life. I'm not going to allow frailty to sit in. I'm not going to allow sarcopenia to, waste away my muscle, or, osteopenia to waste away my bones. I'm going to take action now to be the type of senior that I want to be. I want to take control of my life. I'm going to end, my goal is to, hit 100, and I want to go out for a run, come back, have a beer, sit down in a recliner, and then just pass.
Wow. Okay.
That's the way to go.
That's the way to go.
You might say go in the act of sex or something like that, but come on. I mean, at 100, I'm not quite so sure that that's the way it's going to happen. But, that's what it is. We got to imagine what we want and go for it. And whatever category or dimension of life it is, we have control over that.
Now, I know there's going to be some listener that hears that and they're going to be eye rolling. They're going to be like, oh, you mean to tell me I just need to think away my genetics? No, not necessarily. But here's an example. You mentioned, I'm not going to be overcome by sickness. Anyone who's listening to this, they have been sick before, right? Maybe you got the sniffles. Maybe you got the cold. Maybe you've got the stomach flu. There is a difference between, oh, I'm so sick, I can't go into work. And then you have other individuals that are like, yeah, I'm sick, but I'm going to power through it. Those people are almost unfazed by whatever sickness they are. If you look at an office and you see individuals, they hold on to the sickness, they think about that sickness, they become more sick. And then some people, again, it's mind over matter, and they just kind of push through it. No, I'm sick, but it's not crippling. I'm going to keep going forward. I think it's also interesting. How do you feel about not thinking like, I don't want to be sick. I don't want to get old. I don't want to be frail. By us thinking, I don't want, we're still thinking about becoming frail, becoming sick, we're still thinking about that. Do you think that's going to have any effect on the mind?
I think it could. Obviously, it's better to be saying, I will, in how we respond to things. So that's a very good point. I think we do want to avoid focusing still on the negative, even though we don't want that. We don't want that. As you were talking about disease, it reminded me of Norman Cousins. Have you ever read any of Norman Cousins' works?
I feel like that name is really familiar.
He's the one that wrote, and I'm trying to remember all the specifics of it, but he wrote about, I think it was himself that had cancer, and through laughter and positive thinking actually helped to beat cancer. And so, again, our mindset dictates how we respond to some of these things. So, if you get sick and you take this kind of attitude of, well, that's it, I'm going to pass, or I'm going to be miserable the rest of my life. Well, that's what's going to happen. But if you're going to say, this isn't going to beat me, I'm going to get stronger, I'm going to survive this, there's a much greater likelihood you're going to survive. And if you don't survive, still the quality of that life that you're going to have until your end is going to be much more positive.
This is going to be a bold statement, and maybe we edit it out, maybe not. But what about the COVID-19 pandemic? I know a lot of people were watching the news that were primarily driven by fear in that aspect. And there were a lot of other individuals that were like, no, I'm not, even if I were to get it, it's just going to roll off of me. I'm going to be sick. And you look at some individuals, yes, unfortunately, they did become hospitalized. And you look at other individuals who got it, it simply was just a sniffle. Or if they were at home, they quarantined, they're like, man, that sucked, but I overcame it. I never thought it was going to be as bad as it was, but I never thought it was going to be bad. So I just powered through. Do you think having the mindset of having this fear of, oh no, I hope I don't get it. I hope I don't get it. I don't want it. It's dangerous. I could become hospitalized. Oh no, now I get it and I'm becoming sick because I put all these thoughts in versus I'm not too afraid of the COVID-19, and then they get it and they're like, that was simply a cold. Now, I know this is a really hot topic and a lot of people have their own different opinions on that, but just thinking of the fact that thoughts control actions, do you think that is going to have an effect with the COVID-19 on people's illness and ailments on it?
Now, I'm a data-driven person.
I know.
And, there has not been, I don't know if there's been any at least significant research that's been done on that. But from an empirical standpoint, I think absolutely that's got to be the case. I mean, I know there's been some studies out there and there's been data collected on the negative effects that all of this, negative thought has had on people's health over the last 2 years. The fear from the media and social media and everything else has just really messed people up. It's increased the levels of depression. There's been greater suicide. And I do think that has a negative, and I think this has been quantified in the literature, that when we have negative thoughts, when we are living our lives in fear, it's going to have a negative impact on our immune systems, which gives us a greater likelihood of getting sick. Now, from the standpoint of kind of a balanced approach, I think, there could be damage done where I'm just going to think my way through this. I don't have to wear a mask. I don't have to social distance. Don't have to take the vaccine. I don't have to worry about anything with my health because I'm not going to get this. I'm just going to will it away from me. That's kind of stupid. So there has to be, along with the idea of willing what we want in life, we have to take the proper actions to get that. Going back to Napoleon Hill, if I want to be rich, I can't just sit down and think and be rich. I have to think about being rich. I have to act on what do I have to do in order to get there. And I don't know if you've ever read any Robert Schuller. He was the founder of the Crystal Cathedral in California. If you've ever heard of that church, when I was growing up, he had a TV show, the Hour of Power, I believe it was called. I think it was on Sundays. It was basically his church worship services. But he's written several books. He was of a mindset that anything can be accomplished if you put your mind to it. And when he started his church in a abandoned drive-in theater in California and built it into this massive Crystal Cathedral, which you can argue is a little bit too extreme when it comes to what we can do with our faith. But when he looked at what it would cost to build that cathedral, and there was a tremendous amount of money involved with it, he determined, if I need, say to start a business, I need $1 million to start my business, and I don't have any money. I can find one investor to give me $1 million. I can find two investors to give me $500,000. 4 investors to give me $250,000, or you can break it all the way down to I could find 1 million people to give me $1. So when you break down those goals, there's always a way to accomplish it.
Right. It's more attainable.
And I don't know how I got to that from talking about COVID, but it's the same thing. If I want to avoid COVID,
right,
and I'll admit right here, I'm unvaccinated. My son had tested positive at one point. I have never tested positive for COVID throughout this, continue teaching. Um, you know, I'm not a person that really gets in tight quarters with people. So that idea of physical distancing was never really a huge issue, but I never had an inkling of it. And I attest that to physical health, focusing in on exercising daily, maintaining a healthy body weight, focusing in on my diet, doing the things that are going to boost my immune system, but still taking the necessary other precautions. I also knew that, for me, the risks of getting it, even though I'm of an age that my risk might be higher, those risks are minimized by doing the other things. And so, I didn't live dangerously and, go into the COVID ward without a mask or without a vaccine, but I did the things that I felt would most protect me. And it seemed to work.
Well, I think that's also an interesting concept too, is, you went through the proper precautions. Although you said you're not vaccinated, you're not risking it. You still practice the physical distancing. You wear a mask when need to. And, we talked about Proverbs and the proverb challenges and little bits of faith. Speaking of faith, I grew up Catholic, and part of Catholicism, they practice Lent, just like Jesus went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and he gave something up, and Satan came in and kind of challenged him. Well, one of the challenges, Satan grabs Jesus and he pulls him up on this like tower. And he's like, oh, why don't you just jump off? If you go ahead and jump off, since you're the Son of God, you can definitely call the angels and they'll protect you. And Jesus is like, you don't want to test God. You don't want to challenge him. So it's kind of like that. You don't want to test COVID. You may not be afraid of COVID, but you're right. You still have to go through the proper precautions to not necessarily get it. You don't want to just be like, yeah, I'm not going to get it. And then you're risking it, right? It's still out there. So I think that's another concept as well, is, we may think that it's not going to happen. It can still happen, right? It just may not have as detrimental effects, due to the proper precautions or the research that we've done, such as you've done with the exercise and all that. Anyways, I feel like I'm getting a little off topic.
Well, I think we get off topic a little bit, but we're actually on that topic of energy follows thought, that, it's not just simply having the thought and this energy is just going to follow. We are, in a sense, really guiding that energy, and so what we do with our thoughts and our actions are going to fuel further thoughts, further actions. And that's what gets us to where we need to go. It's your mind is you're in control. Willie Nelson mentions that several times there. And it's not just simply making a point, making a thought, and then letting it idle. You have to act on it. If you want to get somewhere, like the verse you brought up, if you let it idle, ain't no telling where it'll go. That's kind of that notion when we talk about goal setting, that, you set goals to know where you're going. And if you don't, then you never know when you get there. And so if we let our mind just kind of idle, we can have positive thoughts. I'm going to be rich someday, but you're never really acting on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're just idling and you're not going to get there, because someday always is in the future. It's like that saying, tomorrow I'll do this. Well, tomorrow never comes, because tomorrow becomes today.
Right.
I said, well, I said I'd do it tomorrow. Well, you said that yesterday. Yeah, but it's not tomorrow, today. It's today. And so our mind thinks that way, that we have to actually take control and allow that energy to work through us. And I think when you talk about energy, and I talked about quantum physics, I believe this very strongly, that much of, and what brings our spiritual and our physical together is this quantum energy. Call it God, call it the universe, call it whatever you want to call it. There's this energy in the universe that drives everything. When you get down to a quantum level of molecular structure and everything, we're all connected. And that energy, when it is in sync, can do amazing things. And that's what we're striving to do, is to kind of be in sync with that energy. And if we are thinking negative, evil thoughts, that's the energy that's going to be flowing through us. If we're thinking positive, creative thoughts, then that's where our mind and our spirit is going to be going.
I think it is, but you're right. I think if you do think positive thoughts and you put that positive energy out there, like you do radiate positive energy. I don't know if you've ever had the privilege of working with a really positive, ambitious personality, but it kind of spreads throughout the entire office or throughout the entire work area, where like, man, I'm motivated now, versus working with a bunch of people that are ambitious. One negative person can completely change the atmosphere, and it becomes exhausting. You're like, oh my gosh, like you're so negative, your thoughts. I do want to kind of go back to something you said. And even if we have the most positive thoughts ever, right? If we're not acting on it, you're right, we're not going to achieve them. I think it was Michael Jordan that said, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Any opportunity that you get in order to hit that goal that you are thinking about, take it. Go for that. Take that shot. Don't let it idle. Do not let it idle. Just like the song said. That's what I said. This song that Willie Nelson wrote, super multidimensional.
Yeah. Again, not his greatest song, I think, but the lyrics are really good. Let's see what else kind of comes to mind in there. One thing that jumped out at me was, again, that verse, if you hear spirits talking, their wisdom can't be bought. Apply it to your thinking, energy follows thought. Reminded me of Parker J. Palmer. I love his book, A Hidden Wholeness. And in that book, he talks about this concept that comes, I believe, from the Quaker practices. And that's of allowing space for the soul to speak. So when we're interacting, in a Quaker worship service, people basically sit in quiet and allow for, the soul to speak through people. And a lot of times we want to fill everything with noise and our own noise. And, and if you've ever been around people that when you're talking with them, they never listen, they're immediately like chiming in or trying to give advice, or, sometimes you feel like you're talking two different topics. You're talking about one thing and they're talking about another thing, and they keep wanting to kind of go their direction, and it feels so uncomfortable. This idea of allowing the soul to speak, it's something that takes practice. And, I've tried to do it a lot more with Pam and with my kids. And when I do, amazing things happen, and you allow for people to have their voice, and not only to have their voice, but the deeper voice, that voice of their soul to come up through it. And we have to allow ourselves as well time, through meditative practices, through journaling and doing these things. Again, energy follows thought. If we don't allow space for that energy, the thought doesn't develop. And I really just appreciate that book and that idea that, when I am dealing with somebody, if I try to think what I call being other-centered, where you are centered on that individual and what they need, what they want, and allowing space for their soul to speak, their needs are going to come through, and there's much better communication. I don't know if I'm making much sense with all of that.
No, you definitely are. It kind of actually reminds me, I'm actually reading a book right now to help improve my leadership skills as far as being a leader or a supervisor at work, because I feel like there's not enough training on that. So I have to go out and seek book or wisdom. And one of the books that I'm reading, it's a book on leadership, but it's also a book on social intelligence. And they do discuss what I literally just read this probably on Wednesday. They discuss that if someone is coming to you with a problem, their emotions are really high. Instead of you just reacting off of them, they call it the 3-second rule. Now, obviously, don't count in your head 1, 2, 3, but take 3 seconds when they're really emotional. Listen to what that person is saying. And instead of reacting right away, go ahead and just kind of process it and then respond to them. And what that does is that allows you to kind of gain control of an already super high emotional scenario. And then it also allows the other person to feel, wow, they're listening to what I'm saying. They're hearing, they're thinking it through. And by you thinking it through, even though it's only 3 seconds, just like what we're discussing now, that thought is developing. And because that thought is developing, it's allowing you to take actions. Now, this is a challenge. It truly is. If you've never done this before and you've always just been a really reactive person, it's not normal to kind of sit back and, all right, let me think about that for 3 seconds. You want to react, you want to respond, you want to have, but just taking those extra 3 seconds, it's amazing how much more insight you truly can process and then give out to an individual.
And I think Stephen Covey, I think he goes like 10 seconds with that reaction time. But he also talks about, one of his 7 habits of success is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And it's, again, that same process of what you're kind of talking about, allowing that time for your brain to process what the person is saying, to not be reactive, and then to formulate your response. It's also, again, the idea of being other-centered, allowing space for the soul to speak, just stopping, making sure you understand what the person is conveying to you or trying to convey to you. Maybe that idea of mirroring a little bit. So what I'm hearing is you say such and such. And that facilitates our communicative skills. It also, I think, allows that person to feel heard. And even if you come back and say, no, I can't go with that, this is what we have to do, at least they feel like they've been heard.
I feel like 10 seconds, though, that's a long time. If you were my supervisor and I came to you with a problem and I'm heated and I'm emotional, and then I tell you and you're sitting there for 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, like 10 Mississippis is a long time. I'm going to be like, what is wrong with this guy?
Well, you could just say 1,000, 2, 1,000 if you don't like the Mississippi piece. But yeah, and I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've read that book, but it seems to me that that's what he said. It's about take 10 to a count of 10. It might not be 10 seconds. It might just be count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which might be about 3 seconds.
Right.
I know, but the point is taking some time and taking some breaths and processing and then responding. And I don't do that very well. I am very much respond immediately. I mean, my kids hate driving with me when we're hitting roundabouts here in Oregon and everybody has to stop at the yield sign, even though there's no cars coming. I have a lot of tendencies that I really have to work on. I know I convey this nature of being perfect in terms of my wholeness and well-centeredness and everything, but that's not really the case. And, this thought also came a little bit earlier, and it comes back to mind with what I just said, that you mentioned about social media, and I forget exactly what you called the process that is big on social media, but manifesting. And that's also you've heard of people like vision boarding and that kind of stuff. But a number of years ago, I was finding that my social media posts were becoming very negative. I was complaining about things. It's a way of venting. And I realized that's not helpful at all. It's not doing anything for me. I vent it, but I'm still holding on to those negative emotions. And so I started, putting daily quotes up. And that's where I dived into a lot of these James Allen quotes and Orison Swett Martin. I love posting those because they always put me in a positive focus. And, I found a lot of people responded very well to that. It encouraged them. They wwere appreciative of it. But the reality was it was all for me. I mean, I was putting those messages out. And even in my blog, what I write is generally for me. And I would even say, this podcast, I'm doing it for me to keep my mind focused, so that my energy is following my thoughts. And you put those thoughts out in front of you, you put the positive thoughts out, not the negative thoughts, and you're going to follow those. And we have this tendency on social media to just complain. And I still do it occasionally, but I catch myself. When I'm feeling really negative is when if you see a run of the most positive posts on my Facebook page, that's probably a good time. Hey, are you okay? Because you're really positive on Facebook. You must be going through some shit right now. There's something going on. Are you okay? Because that's my way of getting myself recentered.
Well, one of the positive quotes that you do put out there is carpe momento.
Yeah.
Right? It was seize the moment. And you say that you do this podcast for you, but I would disagree. I've worked with you long enough. I think you do this podcast as a way to encourage others who may be struggling or may man, I don't know. Aging, it doesn't matter what step in life that you're aging. You can be a teenager who's going through those emotional roller coasters. You can be a senior citizen to be in a scenario where it's like, man, am I going to maintain this level of independence, or am I going to have to eventually go into a home? You could be a middle-aged person where you're like, man, I'm not quite as young as I used to be, but I don't feel old. And, this is a new chapter in my life, whatever it is. The whole point of the podcast was to make people age well. It didn't matter what step of life that they were going through. It was to say, hey, down the road of life, you're going to hit forks. Let's make sure that you are making the right decision or thinking about it or seizing the moment of opportunity in order to set you up for success, in order for you to hit a goal. We've talked about everything from exercise to nutrition, mental health, depression, anxiety. We're going to cover fiscal health to prep people. I don't think this podcast is just for you. I think it's a way of you taking your life experiences with the science and the background and the knowledge and the facts, and then present it to other people to help to open up a door for them to make their own decision or their own choices, or think about it and follow those thoughts and figure out what's best for them. And no one wants to age and become crippled, right? No one wants to age and look back and be like, oh man, I'm just struggling. I'm so negative, blah, blah, blah. I want to age and I want to mature. And this is where I'm at now, but I don't want to be this way. I want to be better. And I do think that this podcast is for everyone. And I think you think that way too. I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, yeah, I want it to be for everyone. But again, following the theme today of the energy follows thought,
mm-hmm.
The more I am speaking out about exercise and well-centered fitness, the more it puts on me to be doing it, because I can't be sitting there telling people to do this stuff if I'm not doing it myself.
Right.
And so by speaking of it, it compels me to follow what I'm hopefully teaching.
As in actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, I don't want to, I'm not that type of teacher, do as I say, not as I do. I can't be an exercise physiology professor and not be in reasonably good shape. I can't have my students looking at me, I was like, well, why am I going to follow you? You're like 50 pounds overweight. You don't look like you've ever squatted a pound in your life, and you're always complaining about your joints aching and stuff like that. I'm not going to be very effective. But if I, take pride in the fact I'm turning 59 the end of April, and, students, I know sometimes they're sucking up, but they're like, you don't look near that age. I thought you were like 10 years younger. Yeah, they're probably sucking up a bit, but even if their impression is that I don't look quite 55, then I'm making some level of accomplishment there. I don't know if I brought up the James Allen quotes, did I? About you are today where your thoughts brought you. You will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you.
Mm-mm.
I think that's kind of where we're going with this as well. You
That's
know,
James Allen.
that was James Allen.
That seems, not to seem juvenile, that there's a similar quote, actually by Dr. Seuss, and he kind of touches on that same.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know.
what is that book?
The places you'll go
Yeah,
or
the
something.
places you go.
But
Yeah, I mean, it's not generally really maybe original thought. I mean, obviously James Allen, he goes way back. I believe he's like the late 1800s, early 1900s at the latest. Um, Much of his writing is very much biblically based. So I'm sure he was probably one of those ones that read Proverbs on a regular basis and read other scriptures, and that fueled much of his thought processes. So yeah, there's when we read quotes, particularly modern quotes, they're pretty much plagiarized somewhere along. They're paraphrasing somebody somewhere along the line. I love the fact my son is really much into philosophy, and he's taking a philosophy class right now. But he loves reading Aristotle and
Marcus
um,
Aurelius,
Marcus Aurelius was the other one I was going to
great man.
mention. Those are all things you want your kid to be reading, and they're old thoughts, but they are very much true today.
Marcus Aurelius, Alexander the Great. They're old thoughts, but man, if you
Plato,
say it again,
Plato, Socrates, or Socrates.
There's another. It's not necessarily a biblical proverbs. It's more like it's called ancient proverbs, and it was proverbs that were written by an old king. There are like 12 of them. And man, the things, I mean, it was written way, way, way back in like the 1600s. And it's still things that you can use to this day. It's the stuff that we're talking about today. People were talking about centuries, probably a millennium ago. Millennium. That's me.
Probably millennia ago.
Yeah, millennia.
Talking several thousand years ago. I mean, the ancient wisdoms are definitely things that we should not ignore. When you talk about energy follows thought, that was very much the premise of that. And I think if you get to the heart of any major religion, that's what you're going to find.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah. And, so whether you're Christian or some other religion, that God to which everybody speaks of is really the same God. It's just we tend to put on to that God our impressions of him rather than pulling away the layers and going down to really what is God. And I think that's that interconnectedness of the human spirit, the soul, the Holy Spirit, you might say. All that kind of comes together, and you can glean some good information from other wisdoms. And bring them into the perspectives of your own faith and your own belief systems. And there's truth, and then there's our own little colorings of the truth. If you pull away all our little colorings, the truth really reveals itself.
I don't have anything to follow.
You don't have much more on that?
No. I do. I mean, I will touch on. I will agree with you in the fact that. Most big religions do believe that energy does follow thoughts, right? If we talk about Christianity and you go into Proverbs, like I think, therefore I am, and just kind of going on that route. If you talk about Eastern religions, they focus on chi or Zen and pulling energy, pushing it out, positive versus negative, karma. Things to that effect. I would probably respectfully disagree that, it's all one God because there are different religions and different beliefs and different books. And that would just be my opinion, but
I think if you go, you talk in terms of this one creator God, then, even the Big Bang Theory becomes very spiritual.
Very spiritual.
And, there's, what is that God? But energy, there's something. And, it's how we are beginning to understand the flow of energy, the flow of spirit. We don't know everything. And, one of the scriptures that scared me the most is when Christ says, who are you? I don't know you. When he's talking to people who have said, didn't we drive out spirits in your name? And didn't we do this? And didn't we do that? He's like, who are you? I don't know you. Which tells me that there are going to be Christians in the kingdom of God when Christ returns that say, we were your faithful. And he's like, I don't know you. You didn't do what I called upon you to do. And, when we talk about what is God, at the very heart of, how is God defined in the Bible? God is love. Well, what is love?
Everlasting. It's energy. In English, love is one word, but in Greek, it's several different types of love. There's philia, which is like that brotherly love. There's agape, which is an uncanny, undying, unconditional love. There's Aries, which is that more romantic style love. So love has a different meaning depending on where you're looking at it from. But the base of it, love is unconditional. Love is everlasting. Love is, in my opinion, love is the most powerful thing on earth. If you look at a mother's love for their kids, there's documented evidence of a mother lifting a car off the ground because they love it. Wars have been started over the love of a country or the love of someone doing something wrong, and they're going to protect.
Sometimes that love could be called lust as well.
Well,
when
that's
it comes to war.
That is, but love, in my opinion, is one of the most. Man, we're getting really off topic, though.
No, we're not off topic
Okay.
at all. I mean, we're talking energy. Energy follows thought. Well, what is that energy? And, I don't think it's anything we're going to capture in one short little podcast, but I think discovering what that energy is, tapping into it and allowing that positive, whatever the positive energy is, as opposed to the negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
And, in a Christian circle, that might be God versus Satan. And I'm sure every religion has kind of their, the dark versus the light side. Even Star Wars had, the dark side that, was the evil side. But we want to tap into that positive side, that positive energy. And what is that positive energy? We may never wholly in our lifetime discover what that is, but the effort to discover what it is, to engage in that and to live in that is probably one of the greatest purposes of our existence as human beings. Because what other species on earth has consciousness and that knowledge of this energy, of the spirit, of whatever spiritual nature we might kind of define? No other creature has that. I mean, your dogs love, but they don't love in the way that we do. They don't think in the way that we do. And so we are unique in that. And our purpose is to discover what that is for us. And the more we engage in that energy, the more our thoughts are going to be driven by it. And I think that's the beauty of this Willie Nelson song, is that, imagine what you want and get out of the way. Remember, energy follows thought, so be careful what you say. So your actions are going to impact that thought. And so we want to make those positive thoughts, allow the energy to drive that, to follow that, and to move ourselves in that positive direction, always growing, always improving, but not being self-centered in that process, that we are engaging in others, we are sharing that energy. I mean, you think about every molecule, every type of energy, again, getting down to kind of the quantum physics, spirituality there, the molecules in my body are turning over constantly. I mean, I'm made up of carbohydrates, hydrogen, oxygen, and a bunch of other, nitrogen and other things like that. As I ingest food, that becomes part of my body and my body structures. As I turn over cells, I'm expiring carbon dioxide and water. Those molecules are moving out into the universe. What is me right now may wholly be somebody else, over the years as those molecules become exchanged. And so we are connected in ways far beyond what we tend to recognize. And the more we recognize that, and the more we engage in being a part of that energy, I think the more positive we, age.
So obviously, I think just due to time, I think we're going to end on that note as far as aging well. I think that this is a fascinating topic. I do think that we can keep capitalizing on just the terminology energy. I know we talked about the different terminologies of love, but there are different types of energy that are out there. I think that'll be a good subject to cover. I think in the future, another subject that we can cover is the difference between a thought that we're striving for and then an obsession that kind of controls us. But you know what? That's all a part of life and growing and maturing, and how we are going to handle that is going to be the best tool as far as aging well.
Aging well. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.